It needs all the things. Give it all the things.
Oh, perfect. You nailed it.
You can't bend physics. What you can do is write better software.
And you're doing MPLS changes or BGP changes. May God be with you, right?
I always feel like I'm just a little fish in a sea of big fish.
I've got a nested 6-node vSAN.
Aw, guys. People, quite often think that they don't have anything to bring to the table when they absolutely do.
Everybody should. Anybody in IT that skips the phone stuff, it just hasn't earned it.
Okay, I lied. I have one more question.
On demand.
Correct.
Welcome to GigaCast episode 29 for Sunday, May 5th. Live to tape from the GigaCast headquarters, I'm Britton Johnson.
And broadcasting live from the VMware Fox Crossing office, I'm Tony Reeves.
How's week number 2-3 been, Tony? How long has it been already?
Tomorrow's the start of week 3, yeah.
Week 3, dang. Time flies.
Going good. Still getting through lots of onboarding training and meeting some customers and partners and kind of starting to get into the swing of things here. So it's been good.
So I listened to parts 1 and 2 of your interview on the Nerd Journey podcast. Nice job.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, that was actually a really fun podcast.
Those guys run what I would like to call like the NPR podcast of IT podcasts because it's so quiet and just, it's okay.
They had quite the list of questions, and unlike us, we normally go off the rails. They actually pretty much asked every question on the list.
Wow. Yeah, we're I think we're known for being, uncontrollable and off unscripted, and it kind of scares some of our guests. So hopefully the people we have today are cool with it. So my FutureNet podcast episode with Katie Holmes dropped on Friday. Where I went for like 15 minutes on stuff. I couldn't believe it. I was just talking my head off.
Nice.
And, so that was fun. And the other little quick bit of news before we jump into today's episode, my brother Heath did a Lightboard video for his Cloud Foundation stuff. So go check out, he at HeathBarJ on the Twitters and look at his Lightboard video that he's extremely proud of. So I don't know. That's what I have for quick news. We want to try to get through this episode today quickly because it's going to be jam packed.
So your brother is now trying to hijack your airtime to promote his career.
Pretty much, yeah.
Is that what I picked up from this? Okay.
Tony, who's that guy talking?
Keith, I'm judging you.
That is our first third-time guest, Mr. Cody DeArkland. Welcome to the show, buddy.
Woohoo! I still don't have sound effects. I'm sorry, Pete Fletcher.
every time I feel like I'm going to come back and there's going to be sound effects and I'm let down.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
We'll have to work on that for next time.
Yeah, well,
I can't continue to work under these conditions.
Well, I am going to pay you with swag now, Cody. You're going to get a shirt.
Oh, snaps.
Yeah.
Oh, that's what I should have
upgrade from the cheese coaster.
Come on, that was classic.
I gave one to Pat.
He did. And a shirt.
Yeah.
He took the shirt.
So if you see Pat walking around campus, with a GigaCast shirt on and holding his cheese coaster,
let us know.
Let us know, yeah.
I'll know he's finally made it.
Tweet. Or if you go into his office and you see it on his desk, tweet that picture.
Right. That's going to be great for my career.
Yeah. Snooping.
Okay.
Desktop creeping.
Yet I'm not alone today. Who else is with us?
Yes. Who else is sitting next to you in the virtual sphere of video chat that we're on? Mr. Michael Stanclift. Is that how I say your last name?
That is.
Awesome. Welcome to the GigaCast, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah. So we're here to talk a little, we try to keep things loose and fun on the show, but we're here to talk about our first real serious topic today. Because unknowing to me, I didn't even realize this. We just kind of did this by accident. May is Mental Health Month.
Oh, that line.
I didn't know that either.
Yeah, I didn't.
I didn't either.
All of a sudden, I'm looking. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. This is like a thing. So, so this is on the heels of Michael, yourself, and Cody. Both of you guys have publicly blogged about your experiences in in the realm of dealing with, you know, your mental capacity to process things. And that's probably a horrible way of saying it, so I apologize. But
it's pretty accurate.
okay, all right. Well, and there's gonna, you know, and because, you know, because I'm not a professional, I don't know how to deal with some of this topic. So I'm probably gonna be apologizing a lot. So I'm sorry in advance. But
well, I think, you know, so I would say don't, right? Because I think we're here to talk about something that's pretty sensitive and pretty tough for people to talk about in general.
Right.
And none of us should apologize for asking questions about this, how to deal with friends that are going through this, or how to deal with it ourselves, right? Like, so don't apologize for it, because I think that this is like what we're doing here is trying to make it easier to talk about this. And if it wasn't as challenging to talk about, a lot of people wouldn't be going through this stuff in the way that they are. So don't apologize for it. At least that's my opinion. I'm sure Michael agrees.
Yeah. I mean, I would say, just by inviting us on, I think you've pretty much broadcasted that you're not trying to bring us on to offend us or you know, put anybody down because of what we've come out and said. So,
well,
you know, I mean, I appreciate the opportunity, but just to let you know, you're not, like I said, you're not going to offend me, at least.
all right. Well, you know, I'm not.
No,
You'll probably offend me.
Well, yeah.
And yet you keep coming back.
He keeps coming back. I never try to offend anyone on the show, but you know, no, I've thankfully, knock on wood, not had any real haters hit me yet. So, but you know, Tony had one.
That's part of the reason why I blogged.
Yeah, Tony had one hater on one of his YouTube clips for his Twitter handle name. But
oh yeah, that guy that was giving me all the grief about vSAN's and
yeah. It's like, what's wrong with why is your handle import cargo when you don't have anything about cars on your channel?
Yeah, this isn't a car channel. Yeah.
Oh, that's funny.
Anyway.
Anywho, so okay, so before we kind of get into the nitty gritty details of kind of what happened, or where we're going with this, Michael, give us sort of a synopsis of who you are, what you do, and you know your day-to-day responsibilities to date, and anything that you'd like us to know about you.
Sure. So I'm Michael Stanclift. I'm a technical account manager with VMware. I've been with VMware for about a year. For those who don't know what a technical account manager is, I'm essentially a customer-facing evangelist / consultant / you know, guy who's supposed to know the guys that the customer gets to talk to. You know, I'm assigned to a dedicated customer here in Kansas City. So I spend a lot of time actually at the customer's site, working with them directly. And then when I need to, I'll go grab folks like Cody or any of the technical marketing or internal product managers and you know, try and educate my customer on different VMware products. My customer is pretty large. They've got, I think we were tallying it up the other day. They run just about everything that VMware offers. It's just somewhere in their data center. May not be across the whole thing. So I have to kind of play a lot of different roles and wear a lot of different hats across different products. It's a little bit of a challenge, but I enjoy it.
Yeah. Speaking back to my brother, he started out as a TAM, and it's a challenging role. I mean, you got to wear a lot of hats. You got to kind of, you know, you're like a little bit of pre-sales, a little bit of post-sales. So yeah, it's hats off to you, sir, for trying to know everything.
And from a product perspective, you got to be like knee deep in everything they offer, right? That's a huge challenge versus me being a specialist.
Yeah, one day I'm talking vSAN, the next, you know, an hour later I'm talking PKS and then Bio and Core vSphere, NSX. I mean, you know, like I said, they've got a little bit of everything going on. So it you know, it probably feeds into what we're going to talk about later, but you can't be an expert at all of it. So you kind of just have to know how far you can go, and then when you can grab somebody who's actually knows what they're talking about to provide some value.
Cool. And what is your blog if people want to go look it up?
My site is vmstan.com.
Okay.
And yeah, that should be the top hit. There's the content of the day.
All right. And Cody, has anything changed with you since we talked to you last?
Nope, I'm still me. Still technical marketing for cloud management. So I specialize in the new automation platform, and still have my blog at thehumbledlab.com. So,
and it's still all above our heads.
Yeah.
Right. Still just trying to get people on the level.
Right. Like every time you put something out on Twitter, I could use that GIF from Finding Nemo where Marlin's like, I know he's trying to talk to me.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good one.
Just boom, just gone. So someday I might be there, or at least close, but maybe not.
We'll get you there, buddy. We'll get you. It's a journey. It's a journey. We're just trying to make this happen.
Okay. And just as a pre-warning, in case somebody listening all of a sudden hears a ding dong, it's not your doorbell. We're waiting for Mr. Al Rashid to join us as well. He can make it. If he can make it, he just got off a flight, and he just on his way home, and he's going to try to jump in, so he might pop in here at any moment, and that will be enjoyable to have Al back. All right. So as we said at the beginning, May is Mental Health Awareness Month apparently, and so we're talking about this because it's important, I think, and I think this is sort of one of these tough to talk about topics where, in some regards, I think everybody has a little bit of experience with it, and some people have no experience with it. I know, like, my wife has never really had any experience with this issue, versus, other people I know as well who, to my knowledge, have never had any real, problems with anxiety or, these sorts of things. So, and I hadn't had anything close to this until I want to say it was sometime in like early 2017. So this is my public outing story of how my experience with this on my own thing. So here's where I am. Since I'm not a blogger, I'll tell you guys what happened. Okay. I quit my job end of 2016, my day job, to start full-time consulting in January of 2017. And like at the time I thought, this was going to be fairly easy, right? I'm just going to work for myself. I had a book of clients to work off of. Everything was going great. And it really was. I mean, I had really nothing to worry about. And then I, for whatever reason, decided to sign up to do my first VMUG talk on NSX. And like, because of all of a sudden client work exploding and having a lot of stuff to do, I didn't have a whole lot of time to prepare for this talk. And this thing was just like looming in the back of my head. And at about the same time, a brand new client that I just started working for, like their whole this is a small business, but their whole environment basically they hired me in the middle of everything being on fire. And them potentially losing like all the data in their entire business. So
that's always fun.
Yeah.
Well, that sounds unfortunate.
Yeah. So
it's a great time to bring in the consultant.
Exactly. Right. And so, like their previous IT guy had left and set up things in a way. So it was almost like a ticking time bomb. And so eventually the bomb exploded, and he didn't do it on purpose, but it, just was kind of how it was. And the backups weren't really there, and some stuff happened. And like, I'm in their office trying to fix things, and all of a sudden, like, data stores are just disappearing while I'm trying to like do a backup to save things. And so like, I'm just like, crap, like, I don't know that I can prove that I did nothing to do with this. So, and that all kind of worked itself out, because eventually I was able to prove that the data store that they were using for their primary system, which was a Netgear NAS, basically was shot. And so, but it was one of these things of like piling on top of the other. And all of a sudden, like, within 3 days, I have to give this VMUG talk, a highly technical overview of how VMware NSX works to people who've not really heard much about it at this point. And like, it was like a Saturday morning. I got up and dealt with, handled, usually with the routine around here is on Saturday mornings, I get up with the kids. I, get them breakfast while I let them watch TV, let my wife sleep in, and that's what we do. And like all that morning, I was, for whatever reason, just freaking out. That's all I can quote describe it as. And it was probably not until my wife eventually got up that I kind of just lost it a little bit and just broke down crying for a little while. And I had no idea what was going on. I was completely just lost. And it got through that and then did the VMUG talk that week, which ironically, in hindsight now, it's funny because I was freaking out a few days before I did the talk. And because of all this other stuff happening, I get to go do my presentation, and Tony can attest to this because he was there. Everything broke.
Yeah, the projector wasn't working. The audio was funky. Yeah.
Nothing worked. My slides, you were up on the screen because they brought a projector out of the car. You couldn't see anything. Like, it was just all blurry. So I'm up there yelling about NSX for 30 minutes, and nobody can, see anything that I'm talking about. It's just, the whole thing was just a comedy of errors. And so, ever since then, I'm just like, well, if I get up to do a talk anymore, if the projector works and my microphone actually works, then we're good.
Right, you really set your bar low on that one.
So it's just like, again, I was freaking out about, in my head, almost nothing, but in retrospect, everything that could have gone wrong did go wrong on the actual day. So, but that is my sort of like what I guess would classify as my entry level experience in a very small anxiety attack, and it was not fun. And I thankfully have not had anything ever since then, and it's and I've had plenty of stuff to worry about. My kids have been in the children's hospital, and I've had other things happening with them, and it's just like, all of that kind of stuff. Going through some of those experiences really tends to ground you, and there's how. So that's where I come from in all of this. So, Cody, let's kind of start with you while Al gets plugged in here. When you're kind of first, going into this, like when did you realize that you needed some help, that you couldn't necessarily take care of some of the stuff yourself? If that's a good entry question. If there's a better way you want to enter this, then
totally
feel free.
So it's one of those things. So the short answer is when I was like hyperventilating at my desk, sobbing like a child. That's what I knew, right?
Right.
But it's it's interesting, and I use, I don't know, humor is a coping mechanism for me. So like I can look back now and I can laugh at it, but it's almost like I feel like I earned the right to laugh at it a little bit, right? Like it's my joke, so I can laugh at it and I can share that laughter with other people, and other people can laugh, and it's all good.
Right.
That being said, I think that when you look at things like this, it's much like a glass of water, right? A glass of water can only hold so much, and you always think I can pour just a little bit more in, but once it overflows, it's done. Like it's messy, and it's getting all over your pants, it's getting all over the table, and that water has to go somewhere, right? That liquid has to go somewhere. And I can look back now and I can see that for years that cup was filling up, right? This wasn't something that a rough period happened and it just really quickly kind of escalated. This was years of me not dealing with stuff that happened as a young kid, right? And I can look back and I can see mild like situations that happened throughout my life where I should have taken a pause and gone and talked to somebody, and I just didn't. And it was always, I feel better now. I had this big explosion or this big breakdown moment, but I feel better now, so I can get through this. And it just, the big one that happened, probably a couple months ago now, I think. It really brought me to my knees. It impacted me for weeks. It was something I carried around for a while. And it was just, I don't know if just being like mentally mature enough to admit it or what, but I just knew like I am not equipped to handle the emotions that are going through me right now. I don't have the skills to deal with this. I don't have the strategies to deal with this. And I think that people approach like going and talking to somebody like, oh, I'm not going to go talk to somebody because I already know what's wrong with me. Just to be blunt, no shit. Of course you do, right? We all know what's going on with us.
Right.
Like you're not going like, and the biggest thing, like if somebody hears me talking on this and takes it away, it's not about going and having someone tell you what's going on with you. You know yourself, whether you admit it out loud or you want to share that with people. That's a whole nother conversation, but more often than not, you know what's going on with yourself. What you don't always know is how to deal with that. And you don't know strategies to manage those emotions or ways to talk to yourself and deal with those emotions. That's the part that was big for me. And the thing that I took away from talking to somebody about this is I learned ways to manage what I'm going through. I learned strategies and how to think about this in a way that I didn't know how to before. And I still feel that way. Like, it's not like the feelings are gone, but I very much self-talk myself now, and I know the things that make me feel better, and I know how to build a support structure for myself, and I know how to give that to my family and how to have them help me with this. So that's my rant on the topic.
All right. Michael, I kind of want to. Al, I see you. I'm gonna let you listen for a little bit, and then we'll bring you in. Okay.
No problem.
So, Michael, I want to kind of pose the same sort of question to you. Like, I read your blog post, which was incredibly detailed and just, really just raw and very well put together. So, kudos to you for being brave enough to share this. When kind of in your journey towards this ultimate breakdown, when did you really know that you needed to start doing something? And what would you say is a way for somebody to try to identify this a little bit earlier in that path?
Yeah, so I kind of would echo what Cody said. There were probably multiple times in life. I'm 35 years old, so there's probably multiple times to this point where I should have stopped and said, I need help. I should have said something to my wife. I should have said something to my family, my parents, friends, but I just didn't. And I think people could tell, and they could say, well, he's really stressed right now, but then he gets over it. But it was something that, especially in the last probably 6 or 7 years, where I just kept thinking like, I'm gonna break out of this at some point. This is a temporary thing. Mm-hmm. And depression doesn't really work like that. Anxiety, especially when if you're not making any changes and just expecting something to change inside of you, it's never going to happen. And so Cody talks about the glass of water. I'll take a, server admin. I kind of look at it as like and I explained it in the post as sort of just being like, a vent log of your life where some stuff happens and you don't look back at it. You don't really read the log. You say, oh, okay, well, we had this crash or we had something, but we didn't really do anything to address it. We just let it fester until the point where one day, everything comes to a halt. And kudos to you for sharing your experience with, you get to the point where your brain kind of locks up and you don't know what to do, and you start crying. And mine happened. I'd come home from a particularly difficult customer. I already had a lot of this stuff going on. I had some folks on social media who were coming after me and harassing me directly, and I just came home and I saw some tweet that they had thrown out there, and it just sent me over the edge. And I ended up in the emergency room, right? So my wife was actually sitting in my office talking to me, and I looked at the computer and saw it, and I just rebooted. I just completely shut down, crying. And I don't remember much about like 3:30 to 5:30 in that afternoon, right?
Dang.
It was just sort of like this period where all of a sudden I'm on the way to the ER, and then ended up spending like 3 hours in the waiting room trying to get somebody to look at me. And so I had a lot of time to reflect on it in that moment, but yeah, so it's a roundabout way to say there are probably a lot of different places in my life where I probably should have reached out. But leading up to that event, there was probably a 2 or 3 month period where I started to kind of indicate to people, hey, I think, something might be wrong. And at that point, I was expecting somebody else to kind of take care of it for me. I expected somebody else to, like, I don't know, make an appointment or to just directly say to me, like, you need to go get help, but nobody was. And
something I want to say about that real quick, Michael. Sorry to interrupt you. There's something big about that right there. I feel that I felt the same way. I wanted so badly for somebody that I respected, like, because I mean, people will ask you all the time how your day's going, right? All the time, people ask how your day's going. But I really wanted like a mentor or somebody who knew me to just dig into it a little bit, like to dig into how I was doing a little bit, because I wanted to talk about it. It's not like I was sitting there saying I don't want to say this. I just didn't know how. And I desperately wanted somebody to help fix this for me, but I just didn't know how to ask. So like that's something that people should take away from this is we as mentors need to grow beyond just the, hey, how's your day going thing, and ask the people around you and dig a little bit into what's going on in their world. Ask them about things they're having a hard time with. Like, what was the hardest thing that happened in your week this week? Because that's huge. So sorry to interrupt, Michael. That was something that really I resonated with because I felt the same way. I really wanted to talk about it. I just didn't have anybody asking the right questions. Not that it's their problem, it's mine. But. Right.
And I mean, I did too. I guess I wanted somebody to reach out and just kind of grab me and direct me in the direction, of how to fix this. But at the same time, I wasn't really willing to open up to the point where anybody knew that that's what they needed to do. It's when you're trying to hide something for 33 years, you get pretty good at it, until the point where you just can't, and then it's unhideable. And at that point, there really wasn't any way to.
There's no turning back at that point.
Right. Yeah.
Well, and I think this is part and parcel for our day and age. I mean, I think like people can ask how are you doing, but like everybody feels like we know each other so well, quote unquote, because of how much stuff people do share online, and we sort of all have these like surface relationships with each other online, and it's I think it's really easy for somebody to feel like they know you based on the stuff that you post. And so generally speaking, because everybody posts the highlight reel of their life online, and not very many people share the bad stuff, and of course nobody wants to read that. So
well, and one of the things that has kind of come to me through this is that only you really know the real you. Your wife or your spouse, whoever it is, they know a slice of you. They may have a bigger slice than somebody else, but your coworkers know a specific version of you. The people online know a different version. And so, especially with social media and like you said, you can kind of show the best part of yourself, and everybody else looking on the outside sees, oh, well, his life is so great because here's this little slice, and that one slice, hey, he's got the nice car and the big house and the healthy kids and his great job and all this. They don't know what's going on up here that even you're not sharing with the rest of the world.
Right.
Yeah, and I personally don't have a story to share like Britton did, where I've had any kind of a breakdown, but I've certainly dealt with anxiety over the years over on call overnight and what's going to break. If it's going to break, can I handle it? A lot of those imposter syndrome type questions. I've dealt with a lot of that over the years as well. One thing that never, ever used to bother me that now does is I have severe anxiety over traffic. I'm not kidding. To the point where my brain starts going, what happens if I'm stuck here and I can't move and I can't get off if I need to? And the brain starts racing, and I literally I finally discovered that I have to just stop, breathe is my main thing. And I'd never had that happen before. So I can at least partially relate to that and some of the back end IT infrastructure stories you're sharing, but I haven't had necessarily that specific meltdown like you're talking about either yet.
Well, and hopefully you won't, so we can kind of, this is part of this episode, is getting people to realize they need to talk about this stuff with people who are close to them, you know?
Yep.
Yeah.
So, Al, do you have any thoughts you want to jump in here yet?
Hey guys, hopefully you can hear me clearly. Thanks for allowing me to join.
Yeah, sounds good.
Sorry for being late.
You have no excuses. You just got off an airplane.
Yeah, definitely. If you have any questions for me, feel free to ask. I'm just trying to pick up from where you guys left off, or where I jumped in.
Right. All right, Tony, do you have anything you want to jump in with next, or?
Not right off the top of my head. We've actually covered a lot of our questions already.
I know. That's where I'm looking at this stuff. But, all right. Well, and I think, you know.
So I'm gonna fire a question off.
Go ahead.
Bring it
as the three-peat. So Michael, I threw out a couple of things, like, you know, there was one thing that I wanted people to hear. Have you thought about that much? Like, you know, the one thing that you want to get out into the community around this from your perspective. I think that, like, we all have different experiences with dealing with this and the stuff that we've been through here. What's your like your big gem or the big thing that you took away from this?
So the one thing that I would want everybody else to take away from this is that you're not alone, right? So when I was going through sort of the deepest parts of this in early 2017, I didn't think anybody really cared. You know, there wasn't even this level of awareness within, you know, sort of the online V community, that anybody was out there saying, hey, I'm struggling with this stuff too. And so I really had a hard time with thinking that thinking that this was normal. You know, I kind of worked myself into this situation where I just assumed that, like, if I told anybody, I was going to, you know, ruin my job prospects, or, you know, people, every time I would see somebody, they would just automatically associate me with this. And now actually I kind of think of that as actually a good thing. Like if if I'm known now for, you know, stepping up and saying, yeah, I had this breakdown and here's how you avoid it, or here's how don't be like me, then that's fine. But if even a couple months ago, if you told me that the post that I wrote would garner, you know, I don't know, 6,000 views in a weekend, I would have said you're insane. I mean, it's just, well, that's bad language, but I wouldn't have believed you. And so the takeaway is just, I think for anybody who's out there, who's having these feelings, is just speak up. I mean, there may be some jerk out there who will judge you for it, and if it's somebody who's close to you, then maybe you need to reevaluate that relationship. Or maybe, you know, by you kind of coming out and saying, yeah, you know, I have these struggles, they can either adapt their, you know, sort of view or get help that they need too. You know, who knows? You know, and one of the things I talk about is, like, people who are jerks, they're struggling too. You know, people who come after you for things that, you know, I mean, like, I was bullied as a kid. I was bullied when I was 33 years old. And it's a weird sort of feeling to be at that age and be bullied by other adults. But in hindsight, I almost feel sorry for those folks, that whatever it was that was in their life that sort of led them to decide to pick on me to make themselves feel better. I hope that they get help.
Right.
If I could jump in.
Go ahead, Al.
I think for me personally, I felt scared. But I felt scared because I thought if I shared how I felt, it was unacceptable, like I was weak. I just got to the point where I'd had enough. And I just decided, you know what, I'm just going to let it go. I'm just going to speak my mind, clear my mind, get it off my chest. And however I'm judged moving forward, I'm willing to live with it. Looking back, I'm glad I did so. I feel better about where I stand. I feel better about where I'm going forward. But going back to what Michael said, being bullied by adults, these adults are insecure individuals, if you ask me. They find nothing better to do with themselves at times, but to bully. And I know I speak for all of us, but I speak also for a lot of individuals like us that are kind and gentle and willing to help others. And they take advantage of those feelings. They take advantage of how open-hearted we are because they are insecure. And in some cases, again, I speak for myself, but it applies to most of us. You just don't know how to react. Or honestly, an expression that I live by, the juice sometimes is not worth the squeeze. Do I want to deal with this aggravation? Do I want to move forward with my life? Do I want to ignore this negativity? And it's just, you get tired of it.
Right.
Yeah. I think, all three of you and others like Eric Lee and people that are willing to put yourself out there, to wear your heart on your sleeve out on the internet. I mean, gosh, all of you guys are brave for doing that and telling your story. And I can relate to, I've read all three of your blog posts. I can relate to portions of all of them. Having been in similar situations, being bullied as a kid as well. And especially, I mean, even, at school and at church is supposed to be a safe place. And I was bullied even at church. And, growing up and through high school before I finally, got the guts to stand up for myself, just you guys speaking out, there's so much positivity that has come out of this through Twitter, through LinkedIn and elsewhere where you're sharing this. There's been so many people that are like, I can relate. That happens to me too. And the more it gets out there, the more the story spreads, the more people are going to be more comfortable sharing their story as well. So kudos to you guys for starting this movement and helping the community.
Right.
Yeah, no, thank you very much. And I give the other, Cody and Michael a lot of credit, including Erica as well. But Michael, something that you mentioned, you had been working on this. It had been sitting in your draft for 2+ years, I believe. I think a lot of us have been feeling the same way for, that amount of time. And sooner or later, you just have to release. You have to let it go. You have to get past it. And in hopes, and I think following up to what Tony said, our goal is to help others so they don't fall down this wormhole, down this trap.
Yeah.
Another thing. Oh, go ahead, Michael. You're good. Go for it.
I was going to credit, so Eric Lee, I've known him for a long time. He's from Kansas City, both as a coworker, as a customer, mentor, community leader. Great guy. I had no idea, right? I worked with him. I knew him pretty well. I had no idea he was going through that. It was sort of him sharing his post last April, May, I'm not sure exactly when, that sort of kicked off the thinking of I need to tell other people this. And so I took him out to lunch the next day and said, I want to tell you my story because I see, we worked at a lot of the same places, but also just a lot of parallels in how we were affected and how we approached getting better. But then, Cody sharing his story and Aaron Bewley sharing his, his video blog around depression, and Christian O'Reilly from Citrix posting his. It was like each time somebody did that, I kept thinking, okay, it had two effects. I need to tell my story. And then I'd also sometimes think, well, these guys are all telling their story and I feel like they've covered a lot of it. So maybe I'll just stay silent. But then it was literally the Friday I posted, I was like, yeah, I'm going to do this. Like, I'm going to join the choir. And I hope it inspired somebody else to do the same.
It's something I feel like doesn't get enough attention is that the things that we're doing around this are giving other people ideas on how to deal with this, right? Because a lot of people say, I don't know how to talk about this. I don't know how to get started. And if somebody reads my blog and says, wow, this guy shared this stuff out, he got a lot of positive support out of it. People were really positive. Like no one said a single negative thing to me about the post. I don't see anything from you negative, Michael. I didn't see anything from yours, Al, back when you did a very similar one. It's been nothing but positive support. And if someone can see that, even if they didn't agree with my post, even if they read it and they're like, oh, it doesn't fit me. But if they take away from that there was an outlet that a guy used on social media to feel better and they can tap into that too, then it's a win.
Yeah.
Right. Like we're giving people different strategies to manage this. And that's something that's very different from like our parents' generation and going back further, right? Because this avenue didn't exist. It didn't exist back then. And there's no substitute for going and talking to somebody and having, a medical professional help you. And if you're having heavier, darker thoughts, seriously, those phone lines are there for a reason. Call them. Don't think that just blogging about that is going to make that go away. But if you can find an outlet in that, by all means, take that outlet. It's a good thing.
Right. And I think you bring up a point, Cody, where, your parents' generation dealt with this kind of stuff in a different way. Like, I know, everything I've ever heard about this kind of stuff is, well, people just need to toughen up, and, have a thicker skin, have a stiff upper lip, whatever the sayings are. And just, brush this stuff off and just don't let it bother you, sticks and stones. Right. And so I think that is that side of it today. It's like, that's just the external thing that adds on some effect of things. And I've been trying to explain this to people who don't work in IT for a while now, of, people who are in technology fields, especially administrative and systems people. We deal with high pressure situations where if a system is down, we can literally have an entire corporation's, ticking time bomb of money being spent of unproductive employees, and you've got the CEO sitting outside your office, tapping his foot on the floor, waiting, like, are you going to fix it, or do I need to send people home, and not pay everybody, and we're just going to close up for the day? A lot of us, have had that experience on some level or another. And it's those kind of high pressure situations where even if the outcome is good and you fix it and everybody goes back to work, there's still that moment in time where you were dealing with that pressure situation, and sometimes the fix is the relief, but sometimes it's just one of those things of, what if it happens again? And what do I do now? And and that's where I feel like we as IT people need to come more together to talk through those things of, and I feel like quote unquote normal people who have real jobs don't necessarily understand that aspect of things, about how, what we do affects so many other people and their day jobs, and how today a lot of them can't work without us. And so it's sort of that extra layer of pressure and things, and are you guys seeing like that in your experience in dealing with some of how some of those kind of situations adds layers onto your own health trouble?
I definitely think that there's a huge aspect of that, right? And I think that each of us, especially between me, Michael, and Alec, we each have a different, profile in industry, right? I'm sure we each have our individual fears about talking about this and how our jobs and our careers kind of escalate that concern, right? I'm supposed to be the guy who stands on a stage in front of hundreds of people and talks about technology and is excited and energetic. Nobody wants to see the guy up there who had an anxiety attack and is breaking down, right? And that creates a whole nother level of stress on dealing with the situation. Like, I can't be this way in public, which is a complete lie. Like, I can absolutely be this way. And if I'm that way in public, it's because I haven't dealt with it and I need to go and deal with it, right? For me, it's about learning to accept that that's a part of who I am and how to manage it. And if I'm not managing it, then I'm not able to effectively do my job. But it absolutely creates a level of stress, to your point.
But also, you should be accepted for who you are and not what they want you to see or
absolutely.
be. Yeah.
Good point.
Yeah.
Very good point, man. Al, coming through with the deepness.
Hey, brother. Sorry.
No, it's good. It's good.
I'm just glad. I can't say it enough, and I've said it before. I mean, my only regret in anything, and we don't ever want to live in hindsight or regret, I just wish I discovered the V community 5, 6, 7 years ago. It just, I look back and I'm like, man, these people, they just generally give, a rat's ass about one another, and they're not asking for anything in return. They just want everybody to succeed, do things the right way, be kind to one another, and help one another get to the point where ultimately, yeah, money's great. It provides for our families and so on and so forth, but we just want to be happy and satisfied. And it's not much to ask for.
Yeah, and the community aspect to this, I think, is really important because, we as a V community are very ready to share some technical triumph that we made, right? So, you may post oh, here's this, blueprint that I created in VRA, and here's this problem, this business problem that I solved, and somebody reads that and they say, okay, well, this doesn't exactly fit my situation, but there's a value out of that. Oh, here's a way of thinking about something that I didn't know I could do with a product, or, oh, I've run into that situation before, and now I can take this one little nugget of knowledge and use that to solve another problem. I think the same thing applies here. If you read my story or Cody's or yours, or you listen to Britton's, anybody's, you don't have to read the entire thing and say, oh yeah, that fits me to a T, to get something out of that says, well, yeah, I've struggled with anxiety when I'm, like Tony said, when I'm sitting in traffic, or if I've got a stressful situation with a customer or executive, like, how do you deal with that? And so just taking those little nuggets and using those to apply to yourself is and having more people share how they deal with that, I think, is really important.
How do you guys? Oh, go ahead, Tony. Sorry.
Has anybody else, when something has gone horribly, horribly wrong at work, just all of a sudden had this like flush, warm feeling come over you, like, oh crap?
Yep.
Or is that just me? Like all of a sudden you're like insanely warm.
That's the pucker up the butt moment, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yes, exactly.
Oh, God.
Oh crap! I just lost.
The culmination of my worst nightmares are happening. I might pass out. I hope I pass out. Please let me pass out.
So I actually experienced it this past weekend.
No.
Part of this trip that I was on, we had an interactive session for some of our end users, and in the past, what we would provide as an IT presentation was, here are a bunch of slides. Here's how you go about doing this. Here's how you go about doing that. Now we want folks to actually do it for themselves, get behind the wheel and drive.
Right.
So we had 6 laptops laid out in the conference room, and guess what happened after the first session?
The laptops crashed.
Woo! So we ended up literally focusing on one laptop that was playing nice, for lack of a better way of putting it, connected it to the podium, displayed it on the big screen, and we just asked for volunteers from the crowd to come up to the stage, go through the exercise, and it served as a learning experience for everybody else. But going back to what you said, Tony, I thought to myself, really? We did about 50 dry runs, and each time we did so, it worked flawlessly. And the one time you want it to work, everything goes to where.
Yeah, and you're in those moments where you've done everything that you can, or you're not even involved. I've been in my office, and there's a presentation that I didn't know about that was happening, and then all of a sudden the system isn't working, and they're jumping on you and they're jacking on you. Get this done now. We had this meeting scheduled, and it's like, guys, there's a million different variables. I'll do my best, but I can only do so much. You know what I mean? I'm only one man. There's a lot of the times, right. Those are some of the frustrating situations.
Well, and that's the thing that I deal with a lot as an independent consultant is, everybody expects me to know every single thing about every piece of technology. Like I can walk into a client's office and they're just like, how come this piece of Excel doesn't work the way I think it should? I don't use Excel on a regular basis. I'm not an accountant. And so, I don't know why it does that.
My printer's broken. Fix it, please.
Print.
I can help you install it.
I can help you throw the printer out.
Well, I'll give you
we're all in IT, so we all know how to fix printers.
Yeah, I'll give you actually 2 more examples real quickly from this past weekend. One end user who's a remote employee, for whatever reason, can't get the problem that she's reporting to us resolved in a remote session. So she kindly offered, bring her laptop to the company trip. We'll take a look at it. We'll do our best to get it fixed for you. It literally took 2 minutes. But the point of this, she was prepared and came prepared. Another employee, going back to what that scenario or the way Tony described it, I had an employee approach me out of nowhere and say, nothing works. Okay. But I didn't know anything about this in advance. And I've got 300 people from the company just staring at me, waiting for me to assist them in some way. So I politely asked her, I said, do you have your laptop with you? And what do you guys think the response was? I know I'm leaving the witness. No, I left it at home.
Of course.
Seriously? Yep. And again, that's minor in the big scheme of things, but it just piles on. It just adds to that frustration.
Right.
And in some cases, just kind of breaks you down and you get over it.
Yeah, we had a huge company-wide meeting at a hotel at
For
my
your
old company,
former employer, yeah.
for my former employer, about, I want to say 3-4 months ago. And we're not AV guys, right? We're the IT infrastructure team. We're very high level, project focused, break fix, design architecture, right? We're not AV guys. And the director had got my boss involved and then pulled me in to help him because he had some things that he didn't quite understand about it. And so we're pulled off on this, getting everything working. I even had to pull some of my podcast gear here to get some of the AV to function and flow right. And we did a million dry runs and everything. And the day before the actual big company meeting, the IT director said, if this doesn't work, it's your ass. Don't embarrass me in front of the company. I'm like, yeah, no pressure, right? Why didn't you guys hire out to do this? People that know how to do this all the time.
Right.
So just another example.
Yeah. And that's like, fortunately, like I've got a good bunch of good customers. Like I've never had a customer or a client or even an employer in my history, like scream at me for something. Like literally scream at me. But it's one of those things of like, there's a lot of small little nuggets in the old TV show How I Met Your Mother, and one of them is the chain of screaming. And so if you're not familiar with it, just go look that up, because basically it's I think it's a very true statement where if you're getting screamed at, you're probably somewhere near the end of a chain of people getting screamed at. And you kind of have to think about, who's screaming at that guy, who's screaming at this guy, what's his wife doing to him at home. And, like if you're in that kind of a situation, that kind of an abusive situation in a professional environment, especially, you can either take all that on and really, cause damage to yourself, or you can try to look at it in a way of, what's the person screaming at me going through that's making them feel this way. So,
yeah. And I was listening to your last episode with Pat, and he talked about, VMware culture and making sure that, you have however many 17 hours or whatever in a day where you're basically not, where you should be sleeping, those other 8-ish, right. But probably aren't, you're up working on something, some new toy or whatever. But, the time that you're at work is probably going to outweigh in some cases the time that you spend with your family. And so if you're in a situation where your employer is contributing to bad mental health, then, whether it's just an individual or it's, company-wide culture, that's something that you kind of have to evaluate and decide if you want to continue to put yourself in that unhealthy situation for a paycheck.
Right. Well,
and when you're in those situations, it's hard. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, like, I think a lot of people, like I've known people professionally who, they work in IT and, they're in help desk jobs or some sort of an entry level thing, and they hate their job and all they do is complain about it. And I look them up on, online, and 15 years later, they're still there.
Yeah.
And there's this thing about a lot of times, we just get stuck in our ruts as humans, and we will just continue to take, abuse in different forms and just be like, whatever, it's just a paycheck. Yeah. But I think Pat is absolutely right. I mean, if you're going to work somewhere where, you enjoy the people enjoy you enjoy your actual work, and it just makes your day go that much faster and better, and you feel better at the end of it. And that's part of the reason, like, I wanted to quit working for a company and just do my own thing, is because, like, I can't stand sitting in an 8x8 cubicle all day and feeling like, this is what my life has come to, as I sit inside this, these four walls and
office space.
Yeah. It's like, like I can enjoy the people, but I need to get out. And I think that kind of adds another thing of, like, stuff that people can do. Like there's a huge thing of IT people just being, fat, lazy slob geeks who just eat, chips all day. And I think
God, they're so delicious though.
and it's
Did you turn off and on again?
Yeah. And it's an extremely difficult thing to get out of an unhealthy cycle. And I'm trying to do that right now. And it's, gosh, man, like that to me right now is like the thing of which contributes to your mental health as well, is your overall physical being is, trying to get in a workout routine, trying to focus and pay attention to what you're eating, and just trying to just be a better human and paying attention to what you're doing, because it's so easy as a professional, for me as a business owner, to just get through my day of just like, oh, fine, I'll just grab a burrito and be on my way, or
right.
grab a Big Mac or whatever. But it's those little, it's death by 1,000 cuts at that point, because sooner or later you look up and you're almost 300 pounds. So.
Yeah, if I could add to that, and when I was more active in terms of jogging, watching what I eat, cooking, everything was prepared by me. I was just much happier. I was in a better place.
Right.
And I used to refer to it as selfish time for Al. All I need is a couple hours a day. You can have me for the rest of the time, when I'm at home. But when I'm going to go jog, it's mental therapy. It's also physical therapy. It allows me to release. It allows me to ask myself, what do I want from myself? What do I want to do moving forward? Where I got caught in a trap is what you just described, Britton. That typical IT guy that stuffs his face with chips, sits behind a desk, and waits for that next problem to come.
Yep.
And it gets tiresome. And before you know it, I'm ashamed to admit it, and I admitted it in my blog. Here I am, but I'm like you, trying to improve, and I'm going to get there. We're all going to get there. It just takes all of us to encourage one another and support one another. But before you know it, we'll be in a better place. It's just a matter of time.
Yep.
Yeah, and a huge shout out to Britton actually and Heath Johnson for some of the scenarios that Britton was talking about earlier. Is I was in several other positions where I was just not happy, and I would talk to Heath about it. I would talk to Britton about it, and they'd be like, you have to get out of your comfort zone. You have to get out of there, and you have to find something else and better yourself. And for a long time, it's a rut. You're stuck in it. It's very hard to get out of that. You're used to the same old, the norm, and you're afraid of stepping out. But once you do that, just like stepping out into the V community, once you do that, the rewards are there. That next opportunity, that next job to learn more about what you want to learn versus what that old job will only limit you to learning. Those are all valuable assets. And a huge shout out to Britton and Heath for your constant encouragement. And you guys helped me get to VMware. So thanks, bro.
Well, I think it just goes to the show. Like everybody in this, IT community or V community at large, we all know people who've been coworkers of ours who've been stuck in their things, and they just like to complain about it. And I think those kind of people, need that little bit of extra pushing to like, no, you got to get out of this. You got to get out of this. Like, hearkening back to my help desk days. I mean, I don't know how many people that I sat in rows of, cubicle help desk people with, where all they did on every single call was when the customer came on the phone and was telling them their problem, they would mute their microphone 95% of the time successfully and just curse a blue streak at this poor person who's just trying to get on the internet, and unmute themselves and then get through some stuff and then whatever. And as a person, I've had to call help desks to get tickets open and things in the past, and and I've been a guy on the phone who has a problem and I need this person to do their job, and I've been that 5% of people who doesn't get successfully muted, and all of a sudden I'm getting cursed at by this poor help desk guy. And so I'm just like, it's in those moments, like, I'd just be like, I almost want to just say to the guy, and I haven't had the opportunity to do it yet, but I'd just be like, dude, like, I've been in the exact chair you're sitting in. If you hate your job that much, learn 2 skills and get the heck out of there. That's all you got to do.
Yep.
Even 1 skill nowadays, just learn how to code 1 thing and get the heck out of there, because you're not doing yourself or anybody else any favors every single phone call you take if you're just, cussing at people all day. That's my 2 cents on the topic.
And to be clear, that example was not me.
One of the things you mentioned about, I would, part of the reason why I kind of stayed in a situation where I wasn't happy was, had to do with money. And I think the job that I in where I was like a full-time dedicated sysadmin, I got paid the least in, was probably one of the more enjoyable ones that I had.
Mm-hmm.
And and they always, there's that adage about, money doesn't make you happy, blah blah blah. I think it plays out.
It certainly helps.
Yeah, it does. I mean, it gives you fewer things to worry about if you manage it correctly.
Right.
But it also kind of feeds into a narrative of, for me, I started having children, my wife quit working, I started making more money, and all of a sudden I was the sort of sole provider for a family of 4 or 5 now. And you kind of, it's like gravity. It just keeps, you can't reach breakaway speed to say, yeah, I need to go find something else to do. Because there's, I got to worry about insurance. I got to worry about, whether I'm going to find something that's going to pay as well as what I'm doing now. And what if I go there and it's just as terrible as where I'm at?
You got to be an adult all of a sudden.
Right.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. So let me ask each of you a question, if you don't mind.
Sure.
If you're single with no kids and you're only responsible for yourself and you're dealing with all this aggravation in a professional work environment, do you stick it out for the money?
I wouldn't.
Exactly. So the common theme is we're all doing it, most times than not, for those other factors, our family, the benefits, the healthcare, so on and so forth. It's just it's an unfortunate fact at times, but you're just sucking it out for those reasons. Money, yeah, absolutely. Right. Money's not great. It helps. It provides for our kids because we want our kids to be happy and successful. But is it worth the aggravation? No.
Well, and let me put on my Dave Ramsey hat for a second, because
I was wondering if you're going to go there. I was going to go there next.
Me doing what I am doing today, would not have been possible without us getting debt free prior to.
Exactly.
And we're debt free, but the house at this point. And it's one of these things of like, if you can work 2 jobs for a couple of years and kill yourself, make as much money as possible and pay off, if you're unfortunately not having student loans and having, all these things, just credit cards and everything, all this other garbage. If you can get rid of that huge weight of garbage off your back, it really frees you. All of a sudden you have choices that you didn't have before. And you can take a job somewhere that has less pressure, maybe less money, and has a better work environment. And maybe it's going to start there at a lower pay scale. But if it's a better environment overall and you can afford to do it for a year or 2 while you start to build yourself up, that to me is like sort of somewhat of the path. And, we're in this day and age now where everybody's got to keep up with everybody else. As soon as you get the high paying job, you got to go out and buy a Tesla, or, you got to just, show everybody how fancy you are. And it's just this horrible cycle we've gotten ourselves into of building a life on debt and how much we owe somebody else. Like Dave Ramsey always say, you drive a fancy car to improve people, to impress people you don't even like. And it's one of those things of like, remember, I'll talk about my brother Heath again. I mean, he leads annually a Dave Ramsey Financial Peace University course here locally for people at his church, and he runs through that class, with a number of people every year, and helps people get out of debt, and it's one of those things of like, it's on everybody's mind, but I don't think people really pay attention to how much it really stresses you out. And they say the number one cause of divorce is money fights and money problems. And, like if you can get rid of the debt of stuff and the addiction to buying things, that's a huge thing that can help your overall well-being and mental health and your relationships in general. And man, everybody says this, like, man, because I didn't go to college, so I don't have school debt. But if I had taken seriously and understood how money works when I was entering the workforce at 19. I mean, I could probably have $500,000 in the bank today if I had actually done that the proper way, but I don't.
So I'm gonna throw a curveball at you and kind of bring it back home. So a huge part of why my situation ended up the way it was heavily centered around money and having things. Mm-hmm. Getting really deep, a big part of why what happened was this feeling of losing everything, because from the time I was about 5 until the time I was about 12, I moved pretty much 2 or 3 times a year, sometimes losing all of my things as a result.
Dang.
And it's really impacted me as an adult, because everything you're saying I totally agree with, but if I'm 100% honest, buying things makes me feel better.
Oh yeah, it's retail therapy. There
was a time, and it's not now. There was a time I didn't care about being in debt because I got to buy things that were mine and nobody could take them away from me.
Sure.
And that's something that my wife and I, full transparency, we had an argument about it this weekend, because this is something that follows me around my entire life now. And the difference between now and 6 months ago is that I'm getting it dealt with through talking to somebody. But where the reason I gave this whole big speech thing is, for me, I could never get fully out of debt. And we've been out of debt for a long time. But I could never get away from that concept without getting me fixed, because otherwise I was going to always go back there, and I was always going to end up buying things again or trying to fill this hole that exists that I've never dealt with. Right. So my advice to people would be, if you're dealing with kind of mental health things, and some of that traces back to money and things, address why those things exist. Address why you have a need for those things. Don't listen to people who just say like that you don't need to buy that TV. Of course, just like what's wrong with yourself, of course you don't need to buy that TV. But if you buying that TV is something that traces back to other issues you have, deal with those root issues. Buy the TV, deal with those root issues, right? Like, deal with those issues and get that fixed so you can start to move forward in your life, get away from jobs that are toxic, get away from relationships that are toxic. But so much of this traces back to you taking care of yourself and dealing with your own shit.
Right.
If you don't deal with that stuff, you won't ever be able to break away from all of these other toxic things in your life.
I agree completely. And that's why I said, going back a few minutes ago, you have to look at yourself in the mirror and sometimes be a little bit selfish and ask yourself, how can I tackle these issues, but do it in a productive way where it's going to lead to happiness, but not affect anybody else negatively or myself.
Totally.
Right. Well, I think we can start to try to wrap this up a little bit. Going through today, I guess, part I think we need to, the one kind of thing we can talk about more here is like, ultimately what people can do and who they can talk to get assistance and help. Besides just talking to a therapist or an actual counselor or professional, I mean, and besides people in your family, I mean, do you guys have other resources of, help that people can go to?
So there's always the standard answers of, there's the mental health hotlines or suicide hotlines. A couple of kind of off the wall ones I suggest: employee assistance program. I visited them. That's how I got my stuff dealt with now. That's how I dealt with stuff several years back when I was having some family issues. I can never say enough good things about company-sponsored employee assistance programs. So for myself, they worked great. But the other one is really be aware of who your inner circle is and aware of the people you talk to. I can tell you the exact moment I started to get better was on a conversation with Jad El Zain. And I was telling him some of the stuff I was feeling and going through. And it was a couple of days after my big breakdown. And I made a joke. As you guys know, I joke about everything. And I was like, I said something along the lines of, I kept saying it. I was like, it's stupid for me to feel this way. And after I said it like 3 or 4 times, he was like, dude, I got to tell you, stop. It's not stupid. Maybe the things you're thinking are going to happen because of this is stupid, but these are your emotions. These are your feelings. Like, you need to give them their credit, and you need to acknowledge them as being real. And it made me realize that, man, talking to the people in my closest inner circle about this is a good thing, because once he said that, it made me start validating that this was a real thing. And this was before I'd gone and talked to anybody. But it made me realize that this is something that doesn't just go away.
Right.
So my outside the box opinion is, be aware of who your inner circle is, and choose people in that inner circle who you would feel comfortable with being the most fallen apart, weakest version of yourself, because those are the people that belong in your inner circle, and not everyone gets to be there.
I would say, if you don't mind, my biggest fear was talking about these issues with my wife. And I've overcome that because I didn't want her to see that side of me. But it's helped me become better, and I feel better about myself. And I know I can handle these types of situations moving forward without allowing it to get under my skin like it has in the past. Another factor, I laugh. Laughter is the best medicine. You can't buy it, and it just heals everything. When I get frustrated in the office, and you guys may laugh when I say this, no pun intended, I literally start laughing. I chuckle, because what else can you do? You just got to let it go, release.
Yeah.
I would echo somewhat Cody said. It just, finding a friend. If you're lucky enough to find somebody who's open and sort of going through some of the same challenges, that's obviously better. But find somebody who's going to listen and know when to pull the emergency cord for you. And if you're in a situation where you feel like you can be open with people you work with, or your manager, let them know, because a lot of companies, I know VMware in particular has sort of training program. They try to help managers give managers the skills to work with employees who may have challenges, whether they're physical, mental, whatever it is. The day after I made my post, I was kind of on the fence about it, but I finally just decided, I'm going to email my team lead and my manager and my director, and I'm going to say, this is, hey, this is out there. I knew some people from my team had already seen it, so I figured I just let them know, and the response I got back was frankly fantastic. And I don't think anywhere else that I'd worked previously, I probably would have felt comfortable doing that, but I didn't feel like there was the team that I'm on that I was going to be judged for just throwing it out there. I also sent it to some of my previous managers. I'd say 3 of the last 4 managers that I had. And one of them kind of knew, because I talked to him a little bit during the time around the panic attack. And, he came back and basically said, I have these same struggles, and I need help. Just, I've been working on this. And we shared stories. Sometimes they just say, wow, I really wish that I knew that you were going through that so that I could have helped you. I wish that I'd known that, just so that I could, it kind of put some things in context for them, that, I didn't need to have a panic attack, or just the way that I may have reacted in a stressful situation with that. If they had that understanding at the time, would have probably helped. So, like I said, if you're comfortable doing that, I'd highly encourage you.
Well, and to that end, I think it brings up a good angle of Michael, where, there are those of us, like, I'm more of the kind of a person who's just going to keep things to myself. Like, I don't tell people stuff. I'll tell my wife pretty much everything, but I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna tell even Tony, my deepest, darkest secrets. And we've been friends for, 25 years. And I just, it's just part of my personality of being a private person. And I'm growing a bit through that. But I will say, for people who want to talk to somebody, but they want to kind of do it almost, like I feel like they want to talk to a trusted person who's going to keep things confidential, but they don't want to pay for it, or they can't pay for it. Or if they want to talk to somebody, who has experience in counseling, Tony and I are both people of faith. We go to church. There are churches nationwide and globally, and all of them have pastors, and pretty much all pastors at some level go through counseling training and dealing with these kinds of issues. And then they bring in the thing that we haven't really talked about, this is that a lot of people use to help this, is there's a spiritual component to our lives that, many people do that in different ways, meditation, whatever you want to do. But if you're really struggling and you don't want to talk to someone, find a local church, find a pastor. They will talk to you, and they'll be quiet about it. And realistically, it's someone you can count on to, give you some assistance and just give you an ear to talk to, more or less, without having to worry about, somebody else close to you finding out about it, if that's a fear. So that's my tip for the crowd is, find someone who will listen to you, even if you don't know, even if they're a perfect stranger, these people will listen to you. The guy who was Tony and I's youth pastor growing up, he does a part-time job now where he is a corporate chaplain, and he goes to these manufacturing companies, and he's just there, and basically they just tell all the employees, these hours on these days, we have a chaplain here. If you have a problem, you can go talk to him, and it's totally confidential. And the company pays for it. And so it's one of these things of businesses do this kind of stuff for you to try to help you get through some of the stuff to make you a better employee. So take advantage of some of that stuff. So. Any last thoughts, Tony?
No, I would just echo some of your last sentiments. There's been some, tough times in my life where God's got me through it, and church family's gotten me through it. And sometimes there's no substitute for that kind of help. So that's something I would echo there as well. But other than that, I think we're good.
Yeah.
I think we got through quite a bit here today, and I think I thank all of you guys for joining us and talking about this. This was a kind of a tough topic, and appreciate you opening up. I mean, even more than you did on your blog posts. So I really appreciate you joining us tonight and talking about this.
Same here. Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the time, and thank you for the opportunity.
Yeah, no, thanks a lot.
Thanks for bringing us on. I appreciate it, guys.
Yeah. All right. Give me 2 seconds, and I'll play us out of here. Once again, this has been GigaCast episode 29 for Sunday, May 5th. Thanks again to Michael Stanclift, Cody DeArkland, and Al Rashid. Check out their blogs. I'll try to link them in the notes after this. Good stuff there. And, again, if you know somebody who needs help, or if you're just concerned about somebody, just, when you go to work tomorrow or after you listen to this and you think somebody's having a tough time, seriously sit them down and just ask them how they're doing, really, and try to have a real conversation with somebody about this, because this is important stuff and you could be saving somebody's life. So thanks again to all of our guests, and we will come back at you again soon with another episode, and Chris Williams is on deck, so we're coming. Thanks again, everybody. Have a good one.